What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to adjust your gears correctly, and also I'm going to throw in a gear replacement cable. Here are some of the items that we're going to be using for our service and then obviously our adjustment. We've got a multi-tool with Allen keys on there. Allen keys are important. You've got a set of side cutters, wet lubricant, which I use for the inner cables, cable ends, a star screwdriver, and then obviously the gear cable. So let's take a look at the bike. This is one of my original bicycles which I bought. I think I was 16 years old and it's still going strong. It's a Schwinn Misa GS. It's got 26-inch wheels on there. I have upgraded some of the parts on there, so it's got a SRAM GX 1x10 gearing system on there. It hasn't really been looked after recently, so I'm going to show you. I think this is the perfect bicycle to show you as well, because it isn't a top spec component or a higher end component. This is what you'd find on a more common bicycle. So this is a 10-speed, a 1x10 gearing system, and I'm going to show you how to replace that frayed gear cable over there. So let's take a look at what we need to actually do here. So this bike's been set up. I've actually deliberately messed up the limit screws on here, which we'll go through in a second. But basically, let's just try and figure out what we need to do. So obviously I've got some experience with repairing bikes, but if you have a look there, your cable, your gear cable, your inner cable runs from here. It gets clamped in underneath there, and then we'll follow it all along the bike. So you can see we've got an outer housing on there. Your cable runs along here, along your top tube, and then into the shifter, which is over here. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to remove the rear cable. So let's just unscrew that, and you can see the derailleur start to peel off now already. We just want to loosen this up so we can take this cable out of the housing. So pop that, loosen this off like this. It's obviously a little trickier doing it with one hand. It's got a little guide underneath there. And now you can see the cable come out of there. Now, once the cable's out, pedal the bicycle, it should go all the way down to the bottom cog now. Now we need to concentrate on pulling this out of here, like that, and then we can remove it from all the eyelets all along the frame. Again, like I said, this is a little trickier doing it with one hand. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to bore you guys with this stuff. Once I get all this out of here, we'll move to the nitty-gritty. Okay, so now that we've got all of the cable out, you can see this is going directly into the shifter here. We need to get that existing cable out of there. So I'm actually quite fortunate because I have a SRAM GX, which is a higher end, well at the time was higher end 10-speed gearing system. So all I need to do is loosen my brake off like this. Just unscrew this, so you can just loosen the brake off slightly. You can move your brake out of the way, and then you're able to actually get to the shifter on this side here. Now you need to peel this cover off of here, and then you'll be able to pull the cable out of the shifter itself. Now I've taken the front cover off this and I've put my flashlight on my phone just so that you can see in more detail what's happened. So the cover's actually come off over here. You've unscrewed this, taken the faceplate of the cover off. Now you need to go shift down to your highest gear and you'll actually see where the cable goes. So I'm grabbing the cable here now and you can see the cable end on there. That's just through there. What you need to do is you just need to pull the spring back on the side, just over there, and push the cable out. Okay, so I've obviously got the cable out now, but when we're inserting the cable back in, the reason why I say put it in a high gear is because that is where the port went, or the nipple went to on the end. And that's the most direct line out of the actual shifter. There is actually an easier access when it's in the top gear, where it actually protrudes on this side. The only difference is that you're going to actually have to feed it around in a circle to get it out of there, and that's why I prefer doing it this way. Now that my new cable's run, put the cover back on there. We can obviously reposition the brake into the right position. Obviously for riding, we can tighten that up in a second. Now, I don't replace the housing, the outer housing on brake cables all the time. This inner housing is more important, and hence why I said you need some lubricant, some sort of lubricant. GT85. Try not to use WD-40. It's not a very good lubricant for inner cables, but I use wet lube. What I'll do is I will put some wet lube inside the outer cables and then run my inner cable back the same way it was originally. So now that we've got our outer housing of our cables, my ones are in okay-ish condition. We want to put lubricant down the little hole where obviously the inner cable goes down, and then obviously lubricate the inside of the housing so you can get a nice free action. Obviously in an ideal situation you'd want to replace the outer housing, but again, it's not always necessary. I don't do it every time I replace my cables, just purely for the fact that it's not always essential. So you've got this far. You've basically got all your cables sorted out. Your cable's going all the way to the end now. It's just simply a matter of feeding it through, reconnecting exactly the same way it was disconnected. But before we do that, I want to show you how to set your limit screws on your bicycle. As you can see from the back of the derailleur, I've deliberately messed up the limit screws on here. Now to adjust your limit screws, you've got two limit screws. You've got a high and a low limit screw. These will control where your chain or the limits of your derailleur. So if your limits on your high end of your derailleur are set, it will be the smallest cog on the rear of your derailleur. The low limit screw will set how high it goes up on this side here. Now these are very important. If you do not set your limit screws correctly, your chain will drop off and go into the frame. It can cause you to lose power, damage your frame, and then also potentially you getting hurt. Similarly, most common thing that I see when I'm repairing people's bikes is their limit screws not adjusted on this side. The chain goes all the way up to gear 1 and off into the wheel, and you can imagine how that goes. Damage your derailleur, break your gear hanger, and it costs quite a bit of money to fix again. So let's have a look at and see on our derailleur what the limit screws are. So if you have a look here, you have a screw at the bottom, and then you have a screw at the top. Now sometimes it's not always clearly marked, but on some derailleurs they'll actually show you, I'm just wiping this clean, there is a high and a low limit screw. And it'll actually say it on the derailleur too. This one unfortunately doesn't have a high and a low limit screw on the derailleur. So we're actually going to have to do this manually. So let's take a look at it. The way I normally do this, and this is one of the reasons why I've actually left this cable loose, is because once the cable's got tension on it, you can kind of get false readings of where your limit screws are set. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to screw these screws on here inwards. As you can see, the screws are obviously screwed in now. You can see they're obviously sitting a lot lower. Now how do you know whether or not you set your limit screws correctly? So the easiest way that I do this is actually pedal. So now let's put the chain back on, that'll probably help first. So let's put this chain back on here. There's also a clutch derailleur on this little one. Put this chain back on somewhere there. I'm going to pedal this bicycle forwards now and see where it goes. Okay. So now that's actually sitting on the high screw. Now the easiest way to check is if you have a look at the jockey wheel just down below here. If that's more or less in line with that cog on the last, on your high gear, that means that you've actually set that limit screw correctly. And that was it from 3 turns. You can't set it directly in line with that cog though. If you set it so that it's perfectly in line, sometimes when you go from your, like this is a 10 speed now, from 9th to 10th gear, it doesn't actually have enough pull to pull it off of the 9th cog into that. So sometimes for perfect shifting, you'll have it slightly offset to the right hand side of that cog itself, and that will give you perfect shifting. So what I've just done here is I've actually shifted it up to the low gear on my bicycle, and what I did was, because there's no cable to actually pull and actuate it, I push the derailleur inwards and it basically mimics a gear shift. So as you push this in, it will push it further outwards towards your low gear. So as you can see, that's on gear 1 now. Now obviously we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll have a look and see in gear 1, is our jockey wheel in line with gear 1? And it is. And I think this is just by fluke. We've actually set our limit screws. But what you would need to do is obviously establish which screw on here will affect the movement of your derailleur. So if you are adjusting your low limit screw and it's going too far inwards into the wheel and your chain keeps dropping off into the wheel, what you would then need to do is screw that screw inwards. What that does is it tightens up the chain, or it tightens up the derailleur, and it'll pull it away inwards into the cassette. And similarly with this side as well. When you tighten this screw up, say that's your high screw, it will pull it into the wheel that way. So your low or your high limit screw will go pull it into the cassette, or inboard of the cassette, and your low screw will pull it into towards the cassette this way. Obviously you need to ensure that your limit screws are set correctly, because if you don't, if you tighten them up too much over there, you won't actually get your first and your last gear on there. So that's essential. So before you tighten your cable down over here inside the clamp, it is good practice to obviously ensure that all of your outer housing is slotted in correctly inside the drop or inside the guides. So we're looking good at all of those things. And then what I normally do is, on your barrel adjuster, on your shifter, screw this all the way in, because you want to make sure that you've got some adjustment as the cable stretches, so you can actually adjust your cable, because this is a brand new cable, it will stretch out. And then, so basically I screw it all the way in, and then I'll back it one turn out like that. And then obviously that gives you play if the cable's too tight, that you can screw it in and loosen the cable off. So we're going to have a look at the actual gear shifting now. So now it's all connected. One click, the gear shifter's not moving. What that basically means is that we don't have enough cable tension on this cable that we've just installed there. So what we need to do is we need to add cable tension by adjusting this barrel screw outwards, like I told you to do earlier on. So I'm going to do that 2 turns on there and see if that'll make a difference. So we're spinning the wheel around, 1 click, still not doing anything. Let's do 2 turns, 1 click, sounds like it's trying to do something. Shift it back down into high gear. Got 3 turns on there. Almost there. 4 turns. There we go, now it's shifted. And that seems to be the sweet spot. Now, just to point out, I've shifted up to gear 1 and there's no play on the lever itself, and it's not going up into gear 1 right now. What we need to do, when I said we don't have enough adjustment on our limit screw, we need to adjust the low limit screw, which is the big cog at the top. Gear 1 is the low limit screw. So I'm going to take a guess and say that it's the top one, it's the low limit screw. We'll do half a turn on there and see if that makes any difference. And voila, straight up into the first gear. So now we know our limit screws are adjusted correctly. We could do with a bit more cable tension on there, but overall, not bad. The very last thing we need to do, obviously to finish off the job, is trim this cable on here and then put our cable end on. So that was hopefully helpful to you guys. I didn't really go into depth with why we do this. So over time our cables do get gunky, they get stretched, they get damaged, and our shifting performance goes down the toilet. And there's nothing better than a crisp shifting bicycle to make your journey, your commute, or even your adventure rides which you do on the weekends are more enjoyable. So with this mod, well, it's not really a mod, it's more maintenance, your bicycle will perform so much better, and also you'll know how to do it, so you won't have to take it into a bicycle shop and pay a lot of money out to do this simple service. my gear shifting cable cost, I think it was £2. Normally when you go into these bike shops, they'll charge you anywhere from around about £15 upwards. Obviously that's here in the UK. I know other bike shops elsewhere in other countries charge sometimes a lot more. So this just sort of empowers you guys. Hopefully it gives you the skills to maintain your bicycle and keep your ride in a really good condition. And hopefully in the future I'll be posting some more videos on maintenance and tips on how you can keep your ride in really good condition without spending a lot of money. Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future.